Rain tapped gently against the windows, the kind of persistent drizzle that soaked through clothes and nerves alike. Outside, the streets glistened in a moody sheen, the early morning quiet broken only by the occasional swish of passing tires, slicing through shallow puddles. On the edge of Maple Drive, where the houses stood close and the lawns were tidy even in bad weather, something unnatural disrupted the order. A puppy, alone. It sat on the sidewalk near a storm drain, unmoving, its fur matted and darkened by rain, its eyes hollow in a way that no creature so young should ever possess. People had noticed it before, drivers slowing just enough to wonder, joggers passing with sympathetic glances, but no one stopped. A stray, they assumed. It would move on eventually, or animal control would deal with it. That was someone else's job, until this morning. Inside a modest white house with chipping paint and a sagging front porch, a toddler stirred in his crib. Luke, barely 2 years old, had been unusually restless. He kicked free of his blanket and climbed over the crib, rail with surprising agility. Small, bare feet slapped softly against the hardwood floor. The house was quiet, his mother still asleep upstairs, unaware. He reached the back door, unlocked it with practiced, clumsy fingers, and wandered into the cold. The puppy didn't move as Luke approached. The child stopped a few feet away, wearing nothing but a pair of dinosaur print pajamas already soaked through. His cheeks were pink from the chill, his curls plastered to his forehead. He tilted his head and watched the animal for a long moment, as if recognizing something in its stillness. Then he took a step forward, crouched, and placed his tiny hand on the puppy's head. The dog flinched but did not retreat. Luke whispered something, a sound too soft for the wind to carry, and the puppy slowly looked up. For the first time in days, its eyes flickered with something faint. Recognition? Hope? It was impossible to say. The two sat like that, frozen, in the rain, locked in a silent understanding. Mia Hart was not a morning person, but when she woke to find her son's crib empty, her blood turned to ice. She ran through the house, calling his name, panic rising with every unanswered echo. The back door hung open. Rain spilled in onto the tile floor. She bolted outside, barefoot, ignoring the sting of cold concrete. Her eyes scanned the yard, and there he was. Her heart skipped. Luke, crouched beside that same bedraggled dog she'd seen on her drive to work all week. She'd pitied it, even felt a twinge of guilt, but never enough to stop. "Luke!" she gasped, rushing forward. He turned his head, smiling, as if nothing were out of place. "Come here, baby. You're going to get sick," she said, scooping him up. His pajamas clung to her, damp and cold. She turned to shoo the dog away, but instead, it stood and took a shaky step forward. It didn't bark, didn't growl. It simply stared, tail low, posture submissive, but eyes pleading. Mia hesitated. I don't know, buddy," she murmured. The dog didn't move. Against her instincts, against her childhood fear of dogs, especially ones she didn't know. Mia opened the back door wider. The puppy stepped in slowly, almost reverently, as if entering a sacred place. Inside, she wrapped Luke in towels and changed him into dry clothes. He squirmed impatiently, craning his neck to watch the dog, who now sat by the living room couch, dripping water onto the floorboards. "Luke, sweetie, we can't keep it," Mia said, but her voice lacked conviction. Luke turned to her, his face serious. Then he pointed at the puppy and said, "He's cold." Mia froze. Luke didn't talk, not really. A few words here and there. "Mama," "more," "no," but never full thoughts, never this clear. She looked at the puppy. It was trembling, clearly exhausted, yet it didn't lay down. It kept its gaze on Luke, waiting. She sighed and brought out an old blanket, wrapping it around the dog. It made a soft noise, half a whimper, half a sigh, and curled up immediately, eyes fluttering closed. Luke sat beside it, mimicking the position. The rest of the morning passed in uneasy quiet. Mia called animal control, leaving a message. She posted a photo on a local community board, but no tags, no collar, and no one claimed him. By afternoon, she noticed something strange. The dog wouldn't eat the kibble she'd found in the pantry, leftovers from her sister's dog's visit. It sniffed the bowl, looked at Luke, and ignored it. Yet it stayed close to the toddler, trailing him from room to room, always a few paces behind. When Luke napped, the dog curled at the foot of his bed. When he woke, the dog stirred immediately. They moved in sync, like a unit. Mia watched from the hallway, unease creeping up her spine. This wasn't normal, not even for a dog that had found comfort in a human. There was something deeper, stranger. That evening, as thunder rolled low and distant, Mia sat on the couch, flipping through a parenting blog on her phone. Luke was playing nearby with blocks. The dog, whom Luke had now named Buddy, watched silently. Out of nowhere, Luke stood up, walked over to Buddy, and pointed at the scar on his leg. "He remembers," Luke said. Mia's heart dropped. She stared at her son, then at the dog. "What did you say?" she asked. Luke didn't respond. He just went back to his blocks as if nothing had happened. Mia examined the scar for the first time. It wasn't a typical injury. It was old, healed over, but oddly shaped. A spiral, almost like a brand. She felt an irrational chill. Later that night, as rain returned and the house creaked with settling wood, Mia tossed in bed, sleep elusive. She dreamt, or thought she dreamt, of a dimly lit hallway lined with cages, the smell of antiseptic, the sound of soft, pained whimpers, men in lab coats, a small golden puppy on a cold metal table. Its eyes, Buddy's eyes, wide with terror. She awoke in a sweat. In the morning, she made a decision. "We're taking him to the vet," she told Luke. Luke didn't protest. He merely placed his hand on Buddy's head and whispered, "It's okay." The vet clinic smelled of lavender and disinfectant. Dr. Hollis, an older man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, greeted them politely. But the moment he saw Buddy limp through the door, his demeanor changed. He froze. His eyes narrowed. "Where did you find this dog?" he asked. Mia explained, watching his reaction carefully. He nodded slowly, then knelt to inspect Buddy, his fingers tracing the spiral scar. "I need to run a few scans," he said, his voice tight. Mia waited in the lobby, her leg bouncing. Luke sat quietly beside her, watching the hallway Buddy had disappeared down. After nearly 20 minutes, Dr. Hollis returned, face pale. "I need to keep him overnight," he said. "Is something wrong?" Mia asked. He hesitated. I just need to look closer. Could be something neurological. Might explain the scar. I promise I'll take good care of him." Mia didn't like it, but she agreed. Something in his eyes made her uneasy, but she wanted answers. That night, she tried to calm Luke as he sobbed, calling for Buddy. He refused dinner, refused his bath. Eventually cried himself to sleep. Around midnight, Mia's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She didn't answer. A moment later, a voicemail. She played it, static. Then muffled voices. Then a sound, like a door being forced open. A low growl. A crash. Then silence. Her blood went cold. She called the clinic. No answer. The next morning, she arrived at the vet's office to find yellow tape across the door. A break-in. Buddy was gone. The vet's assistant only said one thing before police ushered her away. They knew he was here. They were waiting. Mia stood on the sidewalk, holding Luke's hand, watching the rain fall again. Her thoughts raced, heart pounding. This wasn't a stray. Someone wanted that dog, and now, whoever they were, they had him. Mia barely slept after the break-in. The clinic was sealed off with police tape, but the officers hadn't offered much beyond a vague explanation. "Looks like a targeted burglary," one of them said, jotting notes without meeting her eyes. "Could have been anything. Equipment, meds." But it wasn't anything. It was Buddy. And whoever had taken him knew exactly what they were looking for. Luke had been inconsolable. He hadn't spoken since the dog disappeared. No more words. Not even the strange, fragmented phrases that had emerged around Buddy. His silence was sharper than any scream. By noon the next day, Mia found herself pacing the living room, eyes darting to the front window every few seconds. A gnawing sense of being watched had crept into her bones. She told herself it was paranoia, but when a sleek black sedan pulled up across the street and idled without anyone exiting, her instincts screamed otherwise. An hour later, someone knocked on the door. Mia opened it halfway, her body angled protectively in front of Luke, who clung to her leg. A man in a black raincoat stood on the porch. He was tall, expressionless, with a trimmed beard and eyes hidden behind dark glasses. "Ms. Hart?" he asked politely. "Who's asking?" "I'm looking for a dog. Golden brown, male, approximately 20 pounds. May have a scar on his leg. I believe he was seen near your property." Mia's stomach twisted. "No idea what you're talking about." The man nodded, unfazed. "We're offering a reward. Significant. If he turns up, I'd suggest you call this number." He handed her a card. No name, just digits and a tiny embossed spiral logo in the corner. Mia took it with trembling fingers, then slowly closed the door in his face. He didn't knock again, just returned to the sedan and drove off without a sound. Later that night, after Luke had finally dozed off clutching his favorite blanket, Mia sat at the kitchen table and stared at the card. The spiral. She remembered the scar on Buddy's leg, the exact same shape. It wasn't just a wound. It was a brand. She opened her laptop, digging through forums, search engines, old news databases. Hours passed, the rain outside turning heavy. Then, at the edge of a forgotten local archive, she found it. A small article from 8 years ago. "Controversial government project shuts down amid allegations of animal cruelty." The headline meant little at first, but the accompanying image, blurred, low-res, showed a sign partially obscured by shadows. The logo was unmistakable. A spiral. The article described something called Project Echo, a classified military initiative reportedly focused on developing animal-assisted trauma recovery for soldiers. It hinted at advanced behavioral conditioning, neurological enhancement, and empathic training. But the details were redacted. The project was scrapped following protests and internal whistleblowing. All test animals were reportedly euthanized. Except one hadn't been. Buddy. Mia stared at the screen, heart racing. She leaned back, trying to catch her breath, but the weight of it settled hard. The dreams. The way Buddy never left Luke's side. The scar. Luke's sudden speech. He wasn't just a dog. He was the last survivor of something much larger. A soft sound drew her attention. Luke stood at the doorway, eyes glassy, holding a crayon in his hand. "Sweetie, what are you doing up?" she whispered. He didn't speak, just walked to the table and laid down a piece of paper. On it was a drawing, childlike but disturbingly specific. A long hallway, doors, cages, people in white coats, and in one cage a puppy, its eyes hollow and familiar. Mia's voice caught. "Luke, where did you see this?" He shrugged and touched his head. "Buddy remembers." The words hit like a hammer. She scooped him up, holding him close. Her son wasn't just repeating things. He was receiving them. Buddy had given him memories. Shared them somehow. Dr. Hollis had to know something. She called the clinic, expecting another wall of silence. But to her surprise, the line connected. "Mia," came the weary voice on the other end. "I was hoping you'd call." His tone lacked any pretense. "You knew," she said. "You recognized that scar. What the hell was that dog?" There was a pause, then a sigh. "Not over the phone. Meet me at the docks. Warehouse 7, midnight." He hung up. Mia debated not going. It screamed of danger, of secrecy. But then she looked at Luke's drawing again, and the look on his face when he said, "Buddy remembers." She left Luke with her neighbor under the pretense of an emergency. He clung to her, but she promised she'd be back before he woke. The docks were deserted, the fog rolling thick and damp across the asphalt. Warehouse 7 stood near the edge of the water, an old structure with rusting walls and a half-collapsed roof. Inside, Dr. Hollis waited near a dusty table, a stack of folders spread before him. "I was part of it," he said before she could ask. "Not the worst parts, but I knew. I helped develop the neural imprinting. It was supposed to heal trauma in kids. Soldiers. Dogs were chosen for their emotional intuition. But we took it too far." He opened a folder. Inside were photos of puppies, each with the same spiral mark. One looked eerily like Buddy. They were trained to absorb emotional data, to recognize PTSD patterns, even predict neurological distress before symptoms appeared. We thought it would revolutionize therapy. But he hesitated. But they started reacting, retaining, too much. Some dogs refused commands, some stopped eating, one turned violent. We realized we weren't just programming behaviors. We were awakening something. Empathy, memory, conscious trauma. Mia stared at him. "You mean they felt pain? Remembered it?" He nodded. "And we didn't know how to handle that. So they shut it down. Ordered every specimen destroyed. I couldn't do it. I helped one escape. Buddy." He nodded again. "I changed his ID, faked a death report. He vanished. Until now." "Someone's looking for him," Mia whispered. "A man came to my house. He knew. They'll want him back, not because they care, but because he's proof of what we did. Living evidence." Suddenly, a noise outside. Voices. Footsteps. "Run," Hollis hissed. "Take your son. Go off-grid. Now." Mia bolted, ducking through a side door as men entered the warehouse behind her. She didn't look back. By morning, she'd packed her car with essentials. Luke still hadn't spoken, but he held her hand tight as they drove. No destination. Just away. They stopped hours later at a small roadside motel. Mia pulled the curtains tight and turned on the television. A news report flashed across the screen. Breaking. Local veterinarian found dead in suspicious warehouse fire. Investigators suspect arson. No further details available. Her breath caught. Hollis was gone. She turned to Luke, who was curled on the bed, cradling his drawing. He looked up, solemn, and pointed at a new shape he'd drawn in the corner. A door. Painted blue, with a spiral carved into the wood. "What's that?" she asked softly. Luke touched his temple. "He wants to go back." Her voice cracked. "Back where?" He didn't answer, but something in his eyes told her he knew the way, and if they followed it, they might find Buddy, and maybe something more. The road stretched endlessly ahead, 2 ribbons of cracked pavement slicing through empty farmland. The radio stayed off. Mia drove in silence, knuckles white on the steering wheel. her gaze flicking from the horizon to the rearview mirror, always watching. Luke sat in the back seat, a blanket draped over his lap, his little hand clutching the edge as he stared out the window without blinking. They'd been on the run for nearly 2 days. Motel to motel, side roads, no cell phone, no cards, nothing traceable. Mia had withdrawn all the cash she could before ditching her bank accounts. She didn't know who these people were, but they had resources, firepower, and they wanted Buddy, wanted what he knew. The image of the blue door haunted her. Luke had drawn it with eerie precision again and again. A steel building behind it, rolling hills, a communications tower in the background. It wasn't a product of imagination. It was memory, passed from dog to child like a secret being kept, alive. Luke had spoken only once that morning, just before dawn, when Mia had woken to find him wide-eyed, whispering in his sleep. "He's waiting," he'd murmured. "He's scared, but he remembers the way." Now, as they passed an abandoned gas station, Luke stirred. "Here," he said. Mia slowed. "Hear what?" Luke pointed. "Turn left. The road goes to the trees." She hesitated, heart thumping. But she obeyed. The gravel road twisted through a grove of pines, branches heavy with mist and silence. A rusted sign emerged from the overgrowth, half-fallen, illegible, but beneath the grime, a faint spiral was just visible. They drove another mile until the woods opened into a wide clearing, and there, just as Luke had drawn it, stood the building. Gray concrete, barbed wire fencing, towering above it, a comms array twisted skyward like a skeletal hand, and at the far side of the structure, a blue door. Mia killed the engine. "Stay here," she said, but Luke was already unbuckling. "No," he said quietly. "He needs me." She didn't argue. She took his hand, and they stepped into the clearing together. The air was unnaturally still. No birds, no wind, just the faint hum of electricity in the tower above. They approached the door cautiously. It was old, flaking paint, but the handle turned without resistance. Inside, dim overhead lights flickered to life. The hall smelled of metal and bleach. Mia recognized it immediately from her dream. The corridor, the locked rooms, the silence. Luke didn't hesitate. He led her, step by step, down the narrow hallways, turning corners as if guided by something she couldn't see. They reached a steel door at the end of the corridor. A keypad blinked beside it. Mia stared. "We can't. Get in." Before she could finish, the door clicked, then opened. No one was there. She pushed it open. The room beyond was a small observation chamber, with a 2-way mirror and an old monitor screen in the corner. And on the floor, chained gently to a metal bracket, was Buddy. His fur was dirty, matted, his eyes dull. But the moment he saw Luke, he leapt to his feet, tail thudding softly against the floor. He whined, short, sharp, desperate. "Buddy!" Luke cried and ran to him. The dog pushed into him, licking his face, his whole body trembling. Mia rushed forward and unclipped the chain. Buddy collapsed against her, not from fear but exhaustion, like a soldier finally allowed to fall. "We have to go," she whispered. But Luke was staring at the mirror. "They're watching." Mia turned. The mirror shimmered. A voice crackled to life from the intercom above. Calm, collected. "Male. Ms. Hart, you're braver than we expected. And your son? He's remarkable." Mia stepped in front of him, shielding him and Buddy with her body. "What do you want?" "We don't want to hurt you. We want to understand. That dog, our dog, he bonded in a way we never anticipated. You've seen it, haven't you? The memories, the empathy transfer." "You tortured him," she hissed. "No," the voice replied. We gave him a gift. He chose to share it, but we couldn't predict the consequences. You've witnessed them. A boy who could barely speak now draws from another being's pain. We didn't program that. We discovered it. And we need him back. No. Don't be foolish. What you're holding isn't a pet. It's living evidence. A mistake. And people are very interested in erasing mistakes. Mia's eyes swept the walls. No way out but the way they came. She whispered to Luke. Can you feel where they are? Luke nodded slowly. 3. Upstairs. 1 near the front door. Buddy growled low, sensing the tension. Mia reached for a metal rod lying by the door. She didn't know what she was doing, just that she had to try. The intercom cut off. An alarm sounded, blaring, red lights flashing along the ceiling. Buddy snarled. Run, she whispered. They sprinted into the hallway. Doors slammed open somewhere behind them. Footsteps, voices. Mia shoved Luke forward. Get out! Don't stop! Buddy ran beside them, legs pumping despite his condition. They rounded a corner and froze. A man in black stood at the exit. He raised a taser. Don't make this harder. Mia didn't speak, but Luke did. He stepped forward. His voice trembled but was steady. He doesn't want to hurt you, he said. The man's arm wavered. He remembers you. You gave him food once, when the others forgot. The man blinked, confused. How do you... Buddy remembers. The man slowly lowered his taser. Behind them, more footsteps. Time was vanishing. The man moved aside. Go. They burst through the exit into daylight. Trees. Wind. Mia didn't look back. They ran until her lungs screamed. Until the tower disappeared from sight. Until the world felt wide and real again. 3 hours later, they were back on the road. No more silence. Luke was humming in the back seat, Buddy's head in his lap. Every now and then, Luke would pause and stroke his fur, whispering something soft. And Buddy would sigh, eyes drifting closed. Eventually, they found a farm off the highway. A woman there had lost her son years ago and took them in without questions. A barn with a warm loft became their temporary home. For weeks, they stayed hidden. Buddy healed, Luke thrived. Words came more easily. Drawings changed, from shadows to sunlight, from cages to open fields. And every night before bed, Luke would sit with Buddy and press his forehead gently to the dogs. He showed me a beach today, he told Mia one night, with red sand and big waves. He used to run there before the cage. Mia kissed his head, heart aching with awe and sorrow. What else does he remember? Luke looked up at her. He remembers love. Months passed. The search ended. No one came. Perhaps the people behind Project Echo had buried it all again. Or perhaps they realized that what they created was no longer theirs to control. Mia didn't care. She had her son. And Buddy. Sometimes, at night, she'd watch them sleep. Child and dog curled together like halves of a soul. A secret shared across the species divide. A mistake, they'd called him. But he wasn't. He was a miracle. And he was finally home.